Hey everybody, MichaelBtheGameGenie here, and on today's video we're going to be taking a look at Sega's second entry into the classic mini system line, the Sega Genesis Mini 2. It's really small. So that's right guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the Sega Genesis Mini 2, which is the head-scratching second release of a Genesis Mini by Sega. Now this console isn't just a copy of the Sega Genesis Mini 1, as it features a different design, controller, and wildly different game list. Now let's take a look to see if those changes justify you picking up the Genesis Mini 2, or are you better off sticking with the original. Here it is, the Sega Genesis Mini 2, and like I said, I almost didn't pick this one up, but the nostalgia was too strong, as this was actually the version of the Genesis I had growing up, and seeing this box brings me right back to Christmas 1994. This box is an awesome recreation of the original Sega Genesis Model 2 box, but boy is it ever tiny, and you will ask yourself, how does everything fit in here? On the back, the games are displayed, and well, they are games that came out for the Genesis in most cases. It's definitely an eclectic games library here, but we will talk more about that later. Alright guys, let's take a look at what's included in the box. So we just tear this flip off the back here, open up the top, pull it open, and there's not much room inside. First off, we're going to take out the cables. We have got our USB power cable. It's going to plug into the system. There's your HDMI cable. And of course, wrapped up in all this stuff is the controller. This is the 6-button Genesis controller. Feels pretty good. Looks really good. Favorite of a lot of people in the community, that 6-button controller. So now we're going to open up the rest. And included is one of my favorite things about Sega. They have actually included a power brick. Not a lot of companies do this anymore. I love the fact they do it. I hate having to borrow from other consoles, getting lost. So thank you very much, Sega, for including that. And last but not least, here it comes, the itty-bitty mini Sega Genesis Mini 2. And look how small that is. Oh my god. But it is beautiful. Now that we have the Genesis Mini 2 out of the box, it's a pretty faithful recreation of the Model 2 Sega Genesis, but again, it really looks small, doesn't it? Well, when comparing it to the Sega Genesis Mini 1, it's actually not that small, as it has approximately the same length as the first console, but it's quite a bit smaller width-wise. Funny enough, this is exactly to scale with the size difference between the real Model 1 Genesis and Model 2. While it is a fairly accurate recreation, there are some slight changes that may have been necessary due to the change in format, as well as geographical differences. First up is the power button is a slide-on power button, where the North American Genesis Model 2 had a push button and power light indicator. Apparently the Japanese version of the Model 2 had a similar switch to the Mini, and maybe that is why they chose this direction. The Mini does not, however, include the light-up power indicator, which I do have to admit I miss. The control ports are also USB now, which of course is to accommodate the remade USB controllers. Speaking of the controllers, the Genesis Mini 2 comes pre-packaged with the Genesis 6-button controller, which was never standard with the Genesis Model 2, as it came with the same 3-button controller the Genesis Mini did. There was a great deal of fan feedback to Sega after the release of the initial Genesis Mini that many people had wished it had come with the 6-button controller, as the fighting games included would have had a much better gameplay experience, and some people prefer the 6-button controller. I personally always loved the goofy, oversized 3-button controller, but I still purchased a Retrobit 6-button gamepad just in case. That still to this day is in the package. The 6-button controller works great on all the games on the Genesis Mini, and especially the fighting games, as this was the best fighting game controller in the 16-bit era, hands down. The D-pad and buttons all work the same as the initial 6-button controller, and it's comfortable in your hands. The one point to note is the mode button on the top of the controller is functional, but is used primarily as a hotkey to reach the screen to save the game or go back to the main menu. If you are like me and prefer to use the Genesis Mini Model 1 3-button classic Genesis controller with the Mini 2, I am happy to report it does work and all the buttons are mapped to the correct locations. In place of the mode button functioning as the hotkey, it immediately defaults to holding the start button for 3 seconds. I was so happy to learn this, as to me this is the best way to play Sewer Shark. The UI for the system is bright and colorful, and really highlights the games including their original box art. There are great filter options to see the game displayed specifically in the order you want to see them, including CD first, which was a huge selling point with me for this system as a Sega CD owner as a kid. Again, it's that nostalgia, man. There are a bunch of fun options for the system, such as choosing the wallpaper for the background of the games, where they are 4:3 displayed over 16:9. I have always personally preferred black bars, but do what makes you happy. If you don't want to see the black bars or any background at all, there is an option to stretch the picture to fit the entire screen, which I would be amazed if anybody chose to use. And surprisingly missing, as it's included with so many other retro consoles, is pixel perfect. For those of you who want to recreate that CRT look, there is a single option for scan lines, and I think it looks pretty good. However, I never use this feature, so judge for yourself. By far my favorite feature though is choosing the audio quality between the Genesis Model 1 and Model 2. As many people may know, each system had different audio chips and produced different quality sounds. Most people prefer the deeper sound of the Genesis 1, but the power is in your hands to hear the audio the way you want, regardless of system. So here is where this review gets really interesting, because we have to talk about the games, and the available library is, well, interesting to say the least. While the games library on the Genesis Mini 1 was filled with classics and huge hits, the Genesis Mini 2 certainly doesn't offer the same quality across the board. What you get here is a mix of Sega first-party and third-party fan-favorite titles that are fun inclusions and may have been missing from the first Mini. Like for example, Streets of Rage 3 is on this mini console, which is both an awesome entry into the series as well as a super expensive game for collectors. You also have maybe two of the best shooters in the Sega Genesis library with Lightning Force and of course, Mark from Classic Game Room's favorite, Truxton. Then you have some games that are considered hidden gems and would cost a fortune on the collector's market. For a fun side quest, go look up the price on Crusaders of Senti, which is an awesome Zelda clone game that I'm certainly excited to see here. Unfortunately, we have some games that I have no clue how Sega or literally anyone sitting around the table thought these were a good idea or a significant enough game to be included on a mini console of any kind, or Genesis collection really. Like for real, Clay Fighters is on this. What, was Pit Fighter not available? What really saves the game library for me and makes the system really interesting is the inclusion of Sega CD, and they have some real choice titles included in this library. Of course, the first thing you think of when you mention the Sega CD is FMV, or full motion video games, and the system comes with the Sega CD 2 packing game and one of my personal favorites, Sewer Shark. I actually reviewed this game almost a decade ago, and you should check out Young Mike and why he thinks people should check this one out. They have also included Night Trap, which is one of the most controversial games of all time for ridiculous reasons, and a must play just for the curiosity factor alone. The Sega CD was so much more than that though, using the boost in storage the CD presented to enhance the look of 16-bit games and add CD quality audio. This can be seen in games like Final Fight CD, which is hands down the best home port of the arcade game and may actually be the definitive experience. Then you have Sonic CD, which of course I also reviewed way back in the day, and is just awesome. While it certainly lacks some of the speed of the other Sonic games because of the level design, it definitely makes up for it with its overall presentation. The big debate on Sonic CD is which audio track was better, the Japanese or North American, and thankfully the developers didn't choose one or the other and have included both and let you choose which one you prefer. There are also some less known but super cool Sega CD games like Robo LS that I suggest you check out as well. At the end of the day, you won't be disappointed by what you find in this section of the library, and longtime Sega CD fans should be thrilled. Well guys, that's my look at the Sega Genesis Mini 2, which as a huge Sega fan, more specifically Sega CD, I'm super happy I picked up. If you're more of a fair-weather Sega fan, I don't know if I can recommend this console to you. Even though it's got a quality build and awesome features, the games list will leave you wanting for more of those great classic Genesis games you might remember playing as a kid. And if that's the case, I would recommend you trying to locate a Sega Genesis Model 1. But if you are looking to explore new and exciting Genesis experiences, there's more than enough quality here with the Genesis Mini 2 to justify your purchase. Anyways guys, let me know in the comments, what do you think of the Sega Genesis Mini 2? Is this something you're interested in picking up, or did you already pick it up, and if so, what do you think of it? As always guys, thank you so very much for watching. This is Michael B. the Game Genie, and I'll see you guys next time.